One Greek commander saved Western civilization with a lie. He sent his servant across enemy lines in the dead of night with a secret message for the most powerful man on earth. The message was completely false, a trap disguised as betrayal, and it worked. The King of Kings took the bait and sailed his invincible armada straight into the greatest naval disaster in ancient history. This is the story of how 370 ships destroyed 800, how one man's genius turned geography into a weapon, and why you are living in the world that Gamble created. September 480 BCE. The narrow straits of Salamis churn with salt spray and fear as the Greek fleet faces down an armada 3 times their size. Behind them, Athens burns. The smoke rises in thick black columns from the Acropolis, visible across the water, a monument to failure. The Persian army has done its work. The birthplace of democracy is now a smoldering ruin. Every temple looted, every home torched. The refugees packed onto the island of Salamis can see their entire world dying across the strait, and now the fleet comes for them. 800 warships bearing down like an avalanche of painted wood and bronze. The Persian armada stretches across the horizon, a forest of masts and oars, banners snapping in the wind from a dozen conquered nations. Expert Phoenician sailors, Egyptian warships, Greek cousins forced to fight their own blood, an empire's worth of naval power concentrated in one place for one purpose: to crush the last hope of Greek resistance. The Greek fleet is trapped. 370 ships against 800. Outnumbered more than 2 to 1. No reinforcements coming, no retreat possible. On shore, Greek women and children huddle in makeshift camps, praying to gods who seem to have abandoned them. This is not a battle anyone expects the Greeks to win. This is meant to be an execution. The final chapter in Persia's conquest of Greece, the end of democracy, of Greek culture, of everything that will one day become the foundation of Western civilization. The Persian King of Kings sits on a golden throne on the heights of Mount Aegaleus, positioned perfectly to watch his enemies drown. He has brought scribes to record his triumph. He expects this to be over by noon. But the Greeks have a secret weapon the Persians never saw coming. Not bronze rams or heavier ships or better sailors. A lie. One brilliant, desperate lie that is about to turn the entire battle inside out. To understand the terror facing the Greeks, you need to understand the man commanding from that throne on the mountainside. This was not just a king. This was Xerxes I, the King of Kings, the ruler of the largest empire the world had ever seen. An empire stretching from India to Egypt, from Central Asia to the Nile. 50 million people bowed to his name. To the Persians, he was not simply a monarch. He was the chosen of Ahura Mazda, touched by the divine, a god in human form. And this god had a burning obsession: revenge. 10 years earlier, his father had sent an expedition to punish Athens. That expedition had ended in disaster at Marathon, where outnumbered Greeks shattered a Persian invasion force. His father died before he could avenge the humiliation. Xerxes inherited not just an empire, but a family debt written in blood. For 4 years, Xerxes had prepared, not a raid, not an expedition, a conquest. He assembled the largest military force the ancient world had ever witnessed. Modern historians estimate his invasion force at over 200,000 fighting men, though ancient sources claimed millions. He bridged the Hellespont with a pontoon of ships lashed together, allowing his army to walk from Asia into Europe. When storms destroyed the first bridge, legend says he ordered the sea itself whipped 300 times for its disobedience. He dug a canal through Mount Athos to avoid treacherous waters. He built supply depots along his route. He brought engineers, siege equipment, and most terrifying of all, a navy that had never been matched. The Persian fleet was a masterpiece of imperial coordination. Expert Phoenician sailors whose ancestors had navigated the Mediterranean for 1,000 years. Egyptian expertise in sea combat. Greeks forced under Persian rule who knew these waters intimately. Each contingent brought their own designs, their own tactics, their own expertise. Together, they formed a naval force of devastating capability. Fast, maneuverable, expertly crewed, and overwhelming in number. By the time Xerxes reached Greece, his campaign looked unstoppable. At Thermopylae, the Spartans and their king had died buying time, but they had only delayed the inevitable. The Persian army poured through and swept south. Most Greek city-states surrendered without a fight. Athens, defiant to the end, evacuated its population and watched as Persian soldiers burned their city to the ground. The Acropolis itself, the sacred heart of Athens, was looted and torched. Now Xerxes sat on his portable throne, cushioned in silk, shaded by attendants, watching his fleet prepare to deliver the killing blow. He had brought his court to witness this moment. His advisors, his generals, his scribes ready to record how the King of Kings erased Greek resistance from the earth. The narrow straits ahead meant nothing to him. He had 800 ships. The Greeks had barely 370. Mathematics favored the empire. It always had. But mathematics was about to meet geography. And this god was about to be humiliated by a politician nobody trusted. Here is how one man outsmarted an empire. While Xerxes commanded with absolute authority, the Greek fleet was tearing itself apart. Inside the Greek war council, the air was thick with accusation and fear. The Spartans wanted to retreat south to defend their homeland, the narrow land bridge that protected the southern cities. Others openly discussed abandoning the fleet and heading home. Every city-state had its own agenda, its own fears, its own survival to consider. Into this chaos of bickering admirals stepped one man, Themistocles, an Athenian politician who had spent the last decade preparing for exactly this moment. He was not a traditional Greek hero, not a Spartan warrior or a nobleman raised in military tradition. He was a populist, a reformer, a man many aristocrats considered dangerously ambitious. But he had two things no one else in that council possessed: a genius for naval strategy and the absolute certainty that he was right. Years earlier, when Athens discovered rich veins of silver in its mines, most citizens wanted to divide the wealth. Themistocles argued for something radical. Use every ounce of silver to build warships, 200 triremes, the most powerful class of warship in the Greek world. His opponents called him paranoid. Athens was at peace. Why build such a massive fleet? Themistocles had a simple answer. Persia would come, not might come, would come, and when they did, Athens would need wooden walls. Now those wooden walls were the only thing standing between Greece and annihilation. Of the 370 Greek ships at Salamis, Athens had contributed 200, by far the largest contingent. That gave Themistocles leverage, but not command. The Spartans, as the acknowledged military leaders of Greece, held overall command, and the Spartan admiral wanted to retreat. The argument was straightforward. A wall was being built far to the south. If the fleet pulled back there, they could defend the southern cities, let the north fall. At least they could save something. But Themistocles saw the fatal flaw in this thinking. Without the fleet, the Persians would simply sail around and attack from the sea. The wall would be meaningless. Worse, in open waters, the Persian advantage in numbers would be overwhelming. The Greek fleet would be surrounded and destroyed in detail. Here at Salamis, in these narrow straits, geography changed everything. The strait was barely 1 to 2 kilometers wide in places. The Persians could not bring their full force to bear. Their faster, more maneuverable ships would lose their advantage in confined space. The heavier Greek triremes, built for ramming attacks, would dominate in close-quarters combat. Most importantly, the Persian numbers would work against them. Too many ships in too small a space meant chaos, collisions, disaster. The narrow strait transformed the Persian fleet from an asset into a liability. If you want to see more stories about the brilliant strategies and impossible victories that shaped our world, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Hit that like button if you are enjoying this story, and drop a comment telling us which ancient battle you think we should cover next. But convincing the other commanders was like trying to turn a ship in a storm. The Corinthian admiral openly mocked Themistocles. "You have no city," he sneered. "Athens is ashes. You have no right to speak in this council." Themistocles fired back with a threat wrapped in reason. Athens had the largest fleet. If the Greeks retreated, Athens would load every ship with refugees and sail to Italy, found a new city, and leave the rest of Greece to burn. It was a bluff, probably. But it was a bluff no one could afford to call. The debate raged through the day and into the night. Outside the council tent, Greek sailors and marines waited nervously. Across the water, they could see the glow of their burning cities. Behind them, on Salamis Island, their families huddled in refugee camps. Everything they had ever known was already lost. The only question was whether they would lose their lives and their freedom as well. Themistocles knew debates would not win this battle. He needed to force a decision. He needed to make retreat impossible. And what he did next looked like treason. He was about to send a secret message to the most powerful man alive, and that message would be a complete lie. Themistocles knew he could not win by force alone. The Persians were too powerful. The Greek fleet was too divided. So he did something that seemed insane. He sent a secret message to Xerxes, lying about Greek plans and luring the entire Persian armada into a trap. The messenger was his most trusted servant, a man who spoke Persian fluently. In the dead of night, the servant rowed across to the Persian lines under a flag of truce. He carried a message that would change history. Themistocles, the message claimed, was secretly sympathetic to the Persian cause. The Greek fleet was in chaos. The admirals were planning to escape under cover of darkness, scattering to their home cities. If Xerxes wanted to catch them all in one place and destroy Greek naval power forever, he needed to act now. Surround Salamis, block the exits, trap the fleet before it could disperse. It was a magnificent lie built on a foundation of truth. The Greeks were divided. Many did want to flee. The message confirmed everything Xerxes already believed about Greek disunity, and it offered him something irresistible: total victory. Not just a battle won, but the complete annihilation of Greek resistance. The end of the war in a single night. Xerxes took the bait. He ordered his fleet to implement a night blockade. Egyptian squadrons were sent to circle around the western side of Salamis and block the far channel. The main fleet was ordered to row into position at the mouth of the strait, cutting off any escape to the east. And here was the genius of Themistocles' deception. To maintain this blockade, the Persian crews had to stay at their oars all night. No sleep, no rest, just endless watching and waiting for Greeks who never came. Meanwhile, the Greek crews, safe in the harbor at Salamis, slept soundly. When dawn came, one side would be exhausted, the other would be fresh. But Themistocles' gambit came with a terrible risk. If the Greek council learned what he had done, they might see it as the betrayal it appeared to be. Worse, the blockade meant retreat was now impossible. The Greeks had no choice but to fight. If Themistocles was wrong about the narrow strait being the key to victory, he had just doomed everyone. The truth came at dawn when an unlikely messenger arrived at the Greek camp. Aristides the Just, a political rival of Themistocles who had been exiled from Athens years earlier, had somehow made it through the Persian lines. He brought confirmation that changed everything. The Persians had them surrounded. Every exit was blocked. There would be no retreat, no escape, no second chances. In the council tent, the revelation hit like a thunderbolt. Some admirals accused Themistocles of betraying them all. Others simply accepted the brutal reality. Trapped meant they had to fight, and if they had to fight, they might as well fight on Themistocles' terms. The geography he had championed became their only hope. The narrow strait was no longer a suggestion. It was their battlefield, chosen not by preference but by necessity. Themistocles addressed the fleet with absolute conviction. The Persians thought they had trapped prey. They had no idea they had walked into an ambush. The strait was too narrow for the Persian fleet to deploy properly. Their ships would crowd together, tangle with each other, lose all coordination. The Greeks, fighting in formation in waters they knew intimately, would turn Persian strength into weakness. Numbers meant nothing in a space too small to use them. The Persians thought they had set a trap. They were already in one. On the heights of Mount Aegaleus, Xerxes arranged his golden throne to watch the slaughter. He could see the entire battlefield from his perch. The narrow strait, the Greek fleet huddled near Salamis, his own massive armada preparing to surge forward and crush them. He had his secretaries ready to record which of his captains performed best, which showed cowardice, which deserved rewards. This was meant to be a coronation of Persian supremacy. He had no idea he was about to witness one of the greatest military disasters in history. In the next 3 hours, the word invincible would lose all meaning. As dawn broke on September 29th, 480 BCE, the Persian armada surged forward into the straits, 1,000 painted hulls churning the water into white foam, oars beating like war drums, pulling in unison, the sound echoing off the hills. They came in waves, ship after ship, confident in their numbers, certain of their prey. The Greeks waited, lined up in the narrowest part of the strait, their bronze-beaked rams pointed forward like spearheads. Then, across the water, a sound that made Persian blood run cold, the paean, the Greek war hymn. 370 ships full of desperate men singing in unison. Not a prayer for mercy, but a promise of violence. The sound bounced off the limestone cliffs, amplified, turned into a roar that seemed to come from the gods themselves, and the Greeks rowed forward. The Persian plan dissolved within minutes. The leading ships entered the strait and immediately encountered a problem. There was no room to maneuver. Ships designed for speed and agility found themselves packed together like cattle in a pen. The ships behind kept pushing forward, not seeing the chaos ahead. Persian captains shouted orders that could not be executed. Oarsmen on different ships tangled their oars together. The neat battle formations the Persians had drilled for years became a meaningless mob. The Greeks rammed forward like battering rams, and the destruction was catastrophic. A Greek trireme at full ramming speed was a weapon of terrifying power. 3 banks of oars pulling in perfect rhythm. A bronze ram at the waterline. 35 tons of oak and muscle slamming into the side of an enemy ship with enough force to punch through the hull. The sound of splintering wood, the screams of men as water rushed into the hold. Ships listing, sinking, oars flailing uselessly in the air. In the confined space, every Persian advantage vanished. Their archery was useless at close range. Their speed meant nothing when they could not maneuver. Their numbers became a curse as ships crashed into each other trying to escape the Greek rams. Persian captains watched in horror as their own ships became obstacles, blocking escape routes, creating chaos. The Greeks, operating in coordinated squadrons, methodically dismantled the Persian fleet, ship by ship, ram by ram. On a small rocky island in the middle of the strait, Xerxes had positioned elite Persian troops. Their job was to rescue Persian sailors and kill any Greeks who made it ashore. Aristides, commanding a force of Greek marines, landed on the island and butchered them to the last man. The very troops meant to secure victory became another symbol of defeat. From his throne, Xerxes watched his invincible fleet disintegrate. Ships sinking, ships fleeing, ships ablaze. His secretaries, meant to record acts of valor, instead recorded catastrophe. Ancient sources claim he tore his robes and wept. Whether true or not, the emotional truth was clear. The King of Kings was watching his empire's naval power die in the span of a few hours. By mid-afternoon, it was over. The Persian fleet broke and ran. The survivors fled toward the coast, pursued by Greek ships that had tasted victory and wanted more. The water was choked with debris, broken oars, splintered hulls, bodies floating in armor, dead before they could swim to shore. The Greeks lost approximately 40 ships. The Persians lost at least 200, possibly more, but the numbers do not capture the magnitude of the defeat. Persia had brought the greatest fleet ever assembled and watched it shattered by a force less than half its size. The victory was absolute. Xerxes, humiliated and terrified that the Greeks might now sail north and trap his army in Europe, retreated. The invasion's momentum was broken. The following year, the Greeks would destroy the remaining Persian army. The Persian threat to Greece was finished. Themistocles, the architect of the victory, did not get the hero's welcome he deserved. Greek politics turned on him. Within a few years, he was exiled from Athens, accused of conspiracy, forced to flee. The man who saved Greece ended up in Persia, living out his days in the court of the enemy he had defeated. Genius, it seems, is rarely rewarded with gratitude, but the legacy of Salamis echoed far beyond one man's fate. The battle preserved Greek independence at the moment it hung by the thinnest thread. It ensured that Athens would survive to experience its golden age. That Greek culture, philosophy, and democracy would flourish instead of being absorbed into the Persian Empire. Without this victory, the world would look unrecognizably different. No flowering of Greek thought, no foundation for Western civilization, no tradition of democracy and individual liberty. If this story of impossible odds and brilliant strategy inspired you, help us share it. Hit that share button and send this to someone who loves history. And make sure you are subscribed so you never miss these incredible stories of how courage and genius changed the world. The Battle of Salamis proved that wars are not always won by the biggest army or the most ships. Sometimes they are won by the best strategy, by leaders willing to take insane risks, by soldiers fighting not for conquest but for survival, by geography used as a weapon, by 100 small decisions that add up to a miracle. In the narrow waters of Salamis, 370 Greek ships faced down an empire and won, not because they were stronger, not because they had better equipment, but because one man understood that numbers mean nothing if you cannot use them, that even gods can be trapped, that sometimes the only way to win is to bet everything on a single brilliant, terrifying gamble. And 25 centuries later, we live in the world that gamble created. What other battles do you think shaped the world we live in today? Drop your suggestions in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of history's most brilliant naval victories, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss our next story. History is full of moments where everything hung in the balance, and we are here to tell those stories. Thanks for watching.